Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, and it's time for the first video on our Russian destroyer videos. And in this How to Play series, obviously we're going to be covering quite a lot of ships, and so as a result, there's a number of different builds here with these captains that you could go down. It just kind of depends on what ship you're going to end up with on this captain. And so enough of me talking about that, let's pop into Vasily Petrov's captain skills and we'll get to talking. So this is going to be kind of my recommended build, this first one is. Then we're going to get into an AA build, which seems a little counterproductive for a destroyer. However, at the very end of the offshoot line is Grozovoi, which actually has very good AA for a destroyer and has defensive fire. And as a result of that, an AA build actually does have some viability if you are just absolutely looking to troll carriers. We're going to talk about a survivability build and then a destroyer hunter build. Now, my recommended build is kind of a mix mash of all of this, and as I kind of explained in some of my other captain skills videos, my goal with my hybrid build or my recommended build is simply to bring up the weak spots and then emphasize some of the strong spots. Of course, as with all of these videos, the caveat here is that these videos are by no means the only ways to set up a captain. In fact, you may run an entirely different captain than I do. Don't feel the need to change if it works for you. Run what works best for you. I'll try and explain the reasons why I choose the skills that I'm choosing, and if it works, you know, if you want to change, you're certainly welcome to. By no means are these the only way, so that my whole goal is to give you a foundation from which to build upon your captain so that your captain might actually, you know, work better for you. So on my recommended build, I'm going to start off with Preventative Maintenance for the 30% reduction into the incapacitation of modules. This pays dividends into engine and rudder getting knocked out, as well as torpedo tubes, as well as main armament. And it really is the quintessential skill for these destroyers. Honorable mentions, you know, you could throw in priority target if you want, but I think that 30% reduction in module incapacitation is such a huge thing. These destroyers are going to get shot at a lot because they're primarily gunboat destroyers. They don't get decent torpedoes until the later tiers, and as a result, you're going to be taking a lot of damage. So for me, Preventative Maintenance is my first pick for number one. From there, it's going to go to Last Stand, and this is kind of a requirement for any destroyer captain to take. Basically, whenever your engine or rudder gets incapacitated, you will still be able to move slowly forward, and your rudder shift time will get cut down, but you'll still be able to maneuver. That is an extremely powerful skill. From there, basic firing training for the 10% reduction in the reload time, plus you get a 20% increase in your DPS of your AA guns as a bonus. From there, advanced firing training for the increase in range. And while I'm sure there are some people that are going, why would you want like 15k range on a destroyer? Because, you know, Tashkent 15.2k on its range. Well, it's not necessarily for Tashkent or Khabarovsk. It has a lot to do with just giving yourself enough comfortable range to work, because these destroyers play best at mid to long ranges where they can maneuver between incoming fire with their high speed and relatively low rudder shift times. And unfortunately, they do have a large turning radius. They've been consistently nerfed as part of that, but the longer ranges just help you dodge more incoming fire. It makes it harder for other ships to actually hit you, and as a result, more range is always a good thing. From there, I'm going to go to Demolition Expert to increase the chance of starting a fire by 2%. That definitely helps out that fire chance. You'll notice here Mr. Tashkent is at 11% with a 4-second reload time, so that adds up really quickly with, you know, having that extra 2% really does help out quite a lot. From there, it's going to go over to Survivability Expert, which is going to increase the hit point pool of each of your destroyer, 350 hit points per tier. At tier 10, that's 3,500 hit points. For destroyers that has, you know, less than 20,000, that's just over 20,000. You know, that can actually play quite a role. You know, that's what, roughly a sixth of your hit point pool. That's not an insignificant increase at the higher tiers. At the lower tiers, it doesn't play as much into it, which is why it's third from last on my list. From there, I'm going to go to Adrenaline Rush, which is going to decrease our reload time of all of your armament by 0.2% for each 1% of hit points lost. Adrenaline Rush is kind of the quintessential 2-point skill. You'll see it's been in a lot of my builds, and it will continue to be in a lot of my builds because it is quite handy to have. From there, we've got a free 1-pointer to throw up. Priority Target if you haven't already picked it up, or Preventative Maintenance if you haven't picked it up. Expert Loader, I'm not really too keen on this because the reload time on this is short enough that you could feasibly shoot and reload by the time the ships, are still in the middle of their turn. You're not going to Citadel much with the lower caliber guns on the destroyers, but I just don't see it as being that useful. In fact, any ship that I'm going to be shooting at that's broadside to me, I'm probably shooting at superstructure, not really aiming for citadels. So that change to AP really isn't that useful. Incoming fire alert, that would be another honorable mention. You could use that, but really these other skills are primarily for carriers or ships that have aircraft, which we don't. So not really a whole lot there left over. So you could really pick any of those as that last point. The second build is going to be an anti-aircraft build. Again, this is primarily focused on like Grozovoi, which has a very good anti-aircraft complement, and those other destroyer leaders that are in that off branch. I've heard decent things about Khabarovsk's AA as well, but I've not actually played Khabarovsk yet, so I can't really say for certain that this would be useful for it. But that build is going to start off with Preventative Maintenance, and that's going to allow us to run Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 as a option, because this is going to take over the main battery Mod 1's job of reducing your main battery incapacitation rate, and Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 is going to double the hit point pool of your anti-aircraft guns, which helps them stay alive longer. From there, I've got Last Stand, again, kind of quintessential and hard to get rid of, and from there, it goes basic firing training and advanced firing training. Again, this is going to be for the AA boost more than it is anything, although it does help your offensive capabilities. 20% increase to the DPS of your AA guns, as well as 20% increase in the range. I'm going to throw in manual fire control for AA, which is going to help Grozovoi's main guns get into the anti-aircraft battle and doubles their effective DPS. From there, Superintendent to take up an additional, whether it's speed boost or defensive fire or heal, depending on what ship you're running, and then Adrenaline Rush to round out things, which Adrenaline Rush, as you take more damage, will help your anti-aircraft AA, but your anti-aircraft battery actually has to survive, which is part of the reason why we run Preventative Maintenance and Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. The next build that we will talk about is the Survivability build, and again, it's going to start off with Preventative Maintenance for obvious reasons, and then it is going to jump up to Last Stand, once again for obvious reasons. Then is going to jump to Superintendent, and the reason why I'm running Superintendent is because the later tier Russian destroyers can trade their smoke for a heal. With premium consumables, this allows you 4 heals. And trust me, I've used them, all of them, on Tashkent before. So it's definitely useful to have Superintendent. I wish I had it on this captain, but I don't at the moment. And it's not in my recommended build. From there, we're going to go to Concealment Expert because, a 10% reduction in your detection range is only going to help you survive just a little bit longer. It allows you to disengage at a little bit closer distances. These ships aren't particularly stealthy, so full-on stealth builds don't generally work out terribly well, but having concealment is a form of defense. From there, it's going to go to Survivability Expert, again, for that 350 hit points per tier of ship. And then from there, Jack of all trades, right here for the 5% reduction in the reload time of all mounted consumables. If you wanted to, you could pick up High Alert, but that's going to focus primarily on dealing with engine incapacitations, floodings, fires, whereas High Alert allows, you still get that 5% reduction in your damage control party, but it also allows you to bring up your heal faster later on in the game, or your speed boost, which that does help out a lot too when trying to get away from ships, especially since all of these destroyers are reasonably quick for their tier. In fact, some of them are the fastest in their tier. From there, I'm going to go to either priority target or incoming fire alert again. We've got an extra point to throw around. One of those two skills would be my recommendations. This last captain build that I'm going to recommend is going to be the Destroyer Hunter build. And as you can probably imagine, this is going to focus primarily around the use of RPF. And I've said it before in other captain skills builds, I just don't see RPF as being that useful of a skill, which is why I don't personally run it. There's a lot of information that you can pick up on the map just from paying attention in game, and there are people who are able to tell you basically based on intuition where a destroyer is going to be. I'm not quite that good yet, but there are those players out there, and I have been known from time to time to have as I've said before, a fourth sense. I'm kidding, it's a sixth sense when it comes to incoming torpedoes, and part of that is just playing destroyers a lot. So that's one way to figure that out. But anyway, that build is going to start off with preventative maintenance, and again, reducing the chances of losing your engine, your rudder, and your main battery. Absolutely critical to destroyer hunting. It's absolutely critical to basically every build, and that's part of the reason why I run it. From there, last stand, for obvious reasons, basic firing training and advanced firing training. Have you noticed a theme yet that the only build that doesn't have that as the part of their core is the survivability build? Yeah. And then from there, you're going to throw in RPF just to try and help locate, destroyers that are running around. Again, I've already explained why I don't particularly find this build to be all that useful, but that's just me. From there, we're going to go to Superintendent for the additional speed boost charge, additional smoke, or additional heal to help you stay in the fight a little bit longer. And you could, if you wanted to, trade out Superintendent for Survivability Expert, either or. Both of those would be solid choices. Honorable mention to Vigilance here. Being able to spot torpedoes just a little bit further out, that also helps out a lot too. So any of those in the third tier would be beneficial in this build, so pick any of those that you want. And then it's going to jump to Adrenaline Rush. Now, one thing that you'll notice has been missing from all of these builds is Expert Marksman. And the reason why I'm not using Expert Marksman is simply because of the fact that these destroyers are best played at longer ranges. Now, the early tiers, not so much. They all have pretty slow turret traverse, but at the early tiers, you're primarily working with your torpedoes and occasionally using your guns and smoke. So you're not there long enough to really need Expert Marksman on Captain, but it is a pretty good skill if you wanted to go that route and do a little bit more knife fighty stuff. Just know that with your concealment, you're never going to be the first, you're always going to be the first thing that they spot. You're never going to spot the other destroyer first unless it's another Russian destroyer. So that's part of the reason why Expert Marksman really isn't that useful to me. Anyway, I hope this gives you guys a good idea of some of the captain skills for Russian destroyers. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. If you've got a different build that works best for you, throw it down in the comments. I'd be interested to see it. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.